For Charles and Diana, the 80s was a decade full of international travel as they introduced themselves and later their children to the world. In 1986, the royal couple arrived in Japan for a 5-day official tour. It was the 24-year-old princess's first time in the land of the rising sun, and the anticipation over her arrival was palpable.
Not surprisingly, the Japanese people have caught royal fever, especially Diana fever.
What do you think of Diana?
She's beautiful.
She's beautiful.
She's so beautiful.
Beautiful.
After landing in Osaka, the couple drove an hour north to Kyoto to take part in a traditional Japanese tea ceremony. Then it was on to Tokyo, where the streets were lined with well-wishers. There, Charles and Diana went to a sumo wrestling match, a kabuki play, and a local department store.
This being an official royal visit, Charles and Diana met with Prime Minister and Emperor Hirohito, the same emperor who 40 years prior had announced the Japanese surrender during World War II.
While Diana was in Japan, she's checking off all the boxes on a traditional royal tour, but of course she's always got her own box over on the side that she's looking to fill. And in this case, it was her work as patron of the Red Cross Youth. And Diana in Tokyo made sure to take time to visit a children's center and do what she does best, which is connect with the people in any given country, in any given region, especially young people.
Anyone who looks at photos from that trip to Japan can't help but notice Diana's fashion.
We see, first and foremost, 80s, 80s, 80s. It is shoulder pads, it is satiny fabrics, it is polka dots. It's the full 80s dynasty experience. I also think we're seeing in Diana's early style some uncertainty about who she is, what her look is. I think she's trying to fulfill, in some ways, the expectations for how a princess should look. At one point, she's wearing a sort of bandeau headband, which I think is sort of like royal 80s fashion, with Diana's like experimenting there. But it's certainly nothing that would have been prescribed by anyone from on high, by the palace. She was sort of finding her own way with a lot of this. And I think what you really see reflected here is it's a woman still discovering her own style.
4 years later, in November 1990, Charles and Diana returned to Japan for the enthronement of Hirohito's son, Emperor Akihito.
The enthronement of the new emperor was a much more formal visit than Diana's first trip to Tokyo. She and Charles also visited a Commonwealth War cemetery, which honors fallen soldiers from World War II. So overall, this was a much more somber visit.
Even though this second visit to Japan was filled with a lot of very formal royal appearances, she had to make time to connect with the people there. And that's what mattered to her on these visits more than anything. So she visited a Honda factory and met with workers there. And she also did her most favorite kind of outing, which was visiting with children at a children's hospital.
Diana visited Japan once again in February 1995, this time for a solo tour of Tokyo on behalf of the British Red Cross. Her mission? To raise global awareness for the victims of the Kobe earthquake, which had claimed the lives of more than 6,000 people the previous month.
In the midst of the dreadful devastation, it was wonderful to see neighbours come to the help of those in need, and to witness the strong sense of community in the refuge shelters.
At this point, her marriage has crumbled to the point where she and Charles have been separated for a while now. So she is visiting Japan on her own.
Diana kicked off her solo visit to Tokyo with a visit to the National Children's Hospital, and then she visited an elderly home where she was sweetly serenaded by residents.
She also visited a Commonwealth War cemetery, which she had done on one of her previous visits. And because Diana was still a member of the royal family, she did have a meeting with the Emperor and the Crown Prince.
She also spent time at the Red Cross headquarters, where she raised awareness for the victims of the Kobe earthquake, which of course was a reason for her visit.
Diana had a rare gift for connecting with people who were suffering. We look back and maybe can hypothesize that Diana's own internal anguish that she was battling, her insecurities, doubts, her unhappiness, that those vulnerabilities allowed her to connect with other people who were hurting. That's one way to see it. I think another way to see it is that she was a deeply compassionate person who found personal fulfillment and healing and purpose in reaching out to those in need. It was something that came almost without thinking to Diana. It was something that she did like breathing.